Sparks have been flying as teams continue to debut their changes for phase 2 of the 2018 Heroes Global Championship. I'm Gillyweed, joined by Jay How. Jay How, what a superb match we had to end Europe today.
It was just amazing to watch. The whole day unfold in Europe this morning has been quite the treat, and if you're in EU, then it's a nighttime treat for them. But you know, seeing the Vikings come out there from HGC, always a treat. And it's one of those things, we're actually sitting in the back. You see Zeratul, you see Greyman, you're like, that's not good. But then HGC's like, check this out. That's a pretty cool way to end the day.
Yeah, it's a nostalgia factor to see HGC bring back out the Vikings in Game 5. But I think it's also really amazing to see Team Liquid get a win over Fnatic. It's been a long time since Team Liquid has been at the top where they used to be in Europe for a very long time ago. So I have a lot of hopes that now with this new roster, they might be able to have the success. We might see them maybe at the Western Clash. But talking about things that happened yesterday, we can take a look at the North American standings in two polarizing series, Jay How, to give the first wins for Endemic and Team Freedom.
Yeah, obviously they were a little bit one-sided, but you look at the level of play that we saw from Team Freedom, that looked like the Team Freedom of old, and they came out and looked strong. Endemic, everybody's wondering, what are they going to look like? So they look strong today. And oh, by the way, speaking of things that happened yesterday, what we saw earlier in EU that I said wasn't supposed to happen, URL is available.
URL!
I learned to read last night. I went back and I read that tweet. So if anybody's wondering that is, it's still not the buffed URL. So it's still a possibility that it shows up today.
Yeah, she was played by Method as a solo laner on Dragonshire. It's pretty cool to see. We'll see if we get that here in North America, but the drafting was very interesting to see yesterday. A lot of what we would see as meta from the mid-season brawl, maybe a few adjustments here and there based on the balance patch that came in, but then also teams trying to bring in their own flavor and their own style within the meta. Unfortunately, those teams didn't find a whole lot of success in those series, but I'm excited to see what unfolds in our series today. We saw two top contenders for North America who might be at the top, Endemic and Team Freedom, looking very good, but we're gonna see more try to challenge that today.
For Team Freedom, obviously, they need that redemption. They showed so strong in the early part of the year, fell off in part 2, making a big statement this weekend to come out, obviously get a series victory that most expected them to, but today is a very different story against Heroes Heart. So if they come out in 2-0 in weekend number 1, that's a good start for them. It's
really good. And as we look at what you can expect for today, one team already did that. In Europe, Team Liquid having 2 victories now to kick off Phase 2 has got to feel good, especially for Arcaner joining up with that roster. Granite Gaming, unfortunately losing 0-3 to Method. That's the URL match if you want to go back and see how that URL was built. And then Fnatic versus Team Liquid, that was just a phenomenal match. All around 3-2. It's what I'm hoping we might get from one of our series today. Later on, Heroes Heart Esports, they come back from the mid-season brawl. We're going to see how they do versus that new and improved Team Freedom. But first, we're starting with LFM Esports versus the new roster of Team Octalysis.
New faces for both teams, but Octalysis bringing back not just a new face, but a familiar face with Prismat, something we touched upon at the end of yesterday. It's his 3rd stint with the pairing of Justine and Buds, and somebody that they're very comfortable with on their team. So bringing him back. And then also, by the way, they have somebody named Traded, who conveniently enough came from LFM, and he was a standout star for them, and they're a big part of that. You know, it was one of the things that you see a team, they don't necessarily have the success that you hope. They're obviously newer to HGC, but Draded was a standout star. I could not praise him enough. Him getting an opportunity now on what we perceive to be one of the top teams in North America, it will be now his chance to prove that he deserves that spot, and I think he's ready.
Right, make no mistake, one of the big talking points and viewing points for this match has to be Draded and Droplets. Droplets new off of King's Gambit, who almost claimed a victory in a spot in HGC, but unfortunately fell to No Tomorrow in the end. But still being picked up here to fill Draded's spot, and he was thought of as a player who stood out on that roster, just like Draded stood out on his roster of LFM last phase. So both of them are going to be trying to prove that they deserve these spots, they deserve these chances that they've been given. You guys have been cheering, and we're going to take a look at the global cheer bar. Both of these teams can be cheered for if you want to support your favorite players, your favorite teams, already unlocking a lot of rewards. Of course, there's also the team rewards, banners and sprays within the game that we know you guys have been using. But Jay How, I am just so pumped to get this match underway.
It's something that I've been looking forward to. Droplets, I had an opportunity. He was actually in Sweden for a short period of time doing some media for the HGC thing, so a cool trip for him. He got to experience a little bit of how that was, and he understands where he's coming from, but he also understands where he's going. And, you know, all these new names that show up when I start hearing about scrims, when I start hearing about tryouts before the rosters come in, I might poke around a little bit, get some thoughts, get some ideas on who might be going in different places. And the number one name that I kept hearing, the best person to come from the open division that wasn't already an HGC, was Droplets. I think there were some shaky moments during the Crucible when I watched that, but still, based on skill and talent alone, and then getting to meet him and things like that, one of the nicest guys I've met.
Yes.
And so the fact that he gets that opportunity, and he also has the person I think that can fit in on any team, it's a big thing for him to come in and really prove his worth. And I think he's going to show off a little bit, or show up a little bit.
One of the things that impressed me with Droplets was his humility, as you say. I think he's going to be a great fit for this team and a great fit for HGC, and I'm very excited to see him in this match. But another thing that you got to be looking out for anytime you see Fury and Justing face off is that tank versus tank matchup. These are two titans within that role who have hero pools that run very deep. They're aggressive tanks too. And as it happens, we got to talk to both of them about this matchup. Let's hear what they have to say.
So LFM needed 2 players in replacement, which was myself as tank player, and we also picked up Droplet as a range damage. So what I'm hoping to bring for this team is to like guide them as a leader, especially as being the front line is really important to lead a team. So I'm going to be looking to lead them in the front line. I think the strengths in LFM right now with this new roster, we add a lot of variety, but I think our strengths is just being aggressive and looking to punish people out of position. So our first week is against Octalysis, and I think their roster definitely looks a lot better than the last phase, mainly because they're going back to their roots of bringing back Prismaticism. Back then, they had a lot of success when he was on the team, and now Octalysis is also bringing in Draded from, former LFM player. Draded was always known as LFM's strongest player in phase 1, and it's a good opportunity for Draded to see how he does with a top 4 team. But I think our match versus Octalysis, it'll be a pretty close one. I'll be surprised if it doesn't go a full 5 games. Definitely can't take them lightly, and then just gotta play our own game, and we'll see which side of the series it goes to, either LFM or Octalysis.
I think LFM should be much stronger than they were previously with the roster changes. Definitely more worried about our matches next week, but we can't underestimate LFM. I've known Droplets for a while, so I know he's very good and he's very capable. So I think him and Fury both being really good players, I think the team will be a lot better than they were before. To some extent, Draded is for sure going to want to beat his old team, just kind of as you don't want to look embarrassed if you leave a team and then lose to your previous team, so that feels bad. So I'm sure it's going to mean a little bit extra for him, but I think he's fairly focused on the future, and I know he has a lot of respect for LFM. I'm not looking at them as a absolute top contender though, so I should expect a 3-0.
When we talk about Team Octalysis, last phase, of course, they were just 1 game away from being able to go to the mid-season brawl, losing to Heroes Hearth Esports in the final series of the playoffs. But even with that, even being that close, we can safely say that team never got the success that they wanted to, and especially as what was qualified as a superstar roster. And when you look at them now, a lot of that Justing has equated to losing Prismaticism on the roster, feeling like Prismaticism tempers Justing in some ways. And I even called it the Prismat test. Do drafts pass the Prismat test? Because he's kind of the voice of reason within that roster.
He definitely is. Prismat has a very different demeanor, and it's something that in the early days, we go back to when they first got on stage, DreamHack Austin in 2016. Probably the most nervous team we've ever seen grace the stage. And Prismat, we knew that he had jitters. I remember talking to him, I think it was last summer, and I said, what's the secret? What's different now? He said, instead of getting nervous, I just get angry. And I'm like, okay. And so when he
Whatever
gets up
works.
there and he's ready to play, obviously this is not the LAN environment, but it definitely was something that was very apparent in his play style, that he was afraid to make mistakes, things of that nature. But then once he started to hone that in and mature as a player, it definitely looks a lot better. And I think that also, he still has that very same demeanor, but the mindset is different. But the demeanor, I think, definitely helps out that team, as you were talking about.
Yeah, and you talk about maturity. I feel like it's very mature to recognize that losing somebody that made that big of a change did not work out for you, and trying to get them back now. And Prismaticism did really well during his time on Simplicity, filling in for Arrow and making a name for himself in the offlane role. I'm excited to see him back to his regular role. So let's get into the series already then. We're going to check out the Battleground pool. We've got bans on Sky Temple by Octalysis, and then Towers of Doom from LFM. LFM's going to take us to Dragonshire for game 1.
Yeah, Sky Temple being banned out against LFM, it was the only map for a team that did have some struggles, the only map that they had a winning record on, and they pulled off some pretty clean upsets at times. Another map that's still in there is Infernal Shrines. It was a battleground. It was their second best battleground. It's also a map that they beat Octalysis on during phase 1, so look for that to potentially come in. But of course, we will get things started here on Dragonshire.
Yeah, and for Octalysis in phase 1, it was a little bit of everything, which makes them very well-rounded when you look at maps too, but it does still mean that they can ban out certain target ban things, which is always very nice for a team when you start to go into drafts to take away some of those outlier maps like Sky Temple.
Well, you mentioned Fury and Justine, two of the most diverse hero pools, and that's kind of been my biggest thing with Justine, is that sometimes too much might be too much of a good thing, because he's good on all of them, but does it fit the team style? And we're going to get our first look at what that new style is.
Does it pass the Prismat test? What was really funny to me when I talked to Justine about that is I said, wait a second. You're telling me that the person who ran old Sunfire Enchantment into Pyroblast is the person who tempers your drafts and is the voice of reason with them? He's like, yeah, that's it. And so I was like, okay, I believe you. I think it's awesome. But Justine had a lot of confidence in his interview. Fury had a lot of confidence too, but it was confidence in himself to be that veteran, that voice who can carry the team through. He said he has talked to his team and feels like, yes, we might be the underdog in a lot of these situations, but we can make upsets happen as a team. We have that aggression. We know our identity. So I'm really excited to see these two teams face off.
Confidence is actually the word I was going to use, because I've been watching some scrims. I've been keeping an eye on what this new LFM roster looks like. And LFM, with Fury on the front line, gives them a confidence engaging, going into team fights. Something that we sometimes see LFM, there would be a disconnect between somebody going in and then the rest of the team not always there. And that's something, whether it's the right call or not, that'll be determined. But when I see Fury on this team, there's definite confidence. And that's one of the things that when you have somebody skilled and that much of a veteran there, can get those upsets. And if you start winning, they're no longer upsets, they're just wins. So we'll see if they can pull those out.
Talking about Draded and Droplets, what is especially cool knowing that they're going to be facing each other, one's replacing the other on their old roster. They also play the same role and a lot of the same heroes. So Droplets, you know, he has been very close to making it to the HGC for a long time. King's Gambit was no doubt his closest. Being up 3-1 versus No Tomorrow and then losing in that reverse sweep is hard, it hurts, but he gets a chance to prove himself here, and he's going to bring it this game.
Well, we saw the Blaze pick up. Dahaka generally has been a counter, but as we saw earlier, and we do get the Dahaka, Jaina is that North American flavor that we do get a lot of, because she can rotate between that mid-bot and also offer kill potential in those rotations. So something very prevalent in North America. So we'll see how that plays out. That could be the Droplets hero that we're looking for. For those that are wondering, Figgy, former tank for this, is going to the ranged role, does have some flexibility if needed within this roster, but definitely he'll be back there. Swab's hero he made his name for was Dahaka, so he'll be up there in the front line against Goku. Should be an interesting matchup.
Talking about Draded, Draded cannot play his Genji, which has been a big deal, sort of what he was known for definitely, but also playing a lot of Tracer. Malfurion's gone here, but that might be a possibility here. Also some Phoenix and Hanzo too. Very flexible player was Draded throughout phase 1.
When we look into the meta, that's what you want from the hero that you're bringing in, and you're bringing in Prismat as well. Somebody normally takes the primary role, but to have that flexibility to play other things is definitely a key component. We also have to remember we've got a Zeratul now, but we also have to remember that one thing that can happen now, Goku should be the Zeratul player. Prismat, as you said, on his time with Simplicity was the offlane role, can play the Blaze. Zeratul generally would be the Goku hero. So that allows them flexibility, bringing Prismat in, and now we've got to look for somebody, when we look at Octalysis, if that's going to be Draded, can he play something like a Phoenix, something along those lines to have kill potential, have sustained damage, and wave clear? Seeing if LFM will try and target that.
That's really interesting to see, but Zeratul is going to be another one of those heroes that lets the rotation happen up to the top. Try to get some picks on Dahaka there. See what LFM wants to draft as a means of having somebody to do the same. Maybe even adding more into the globals. We'll have to see. We saw a lot of global play yesterday, even having Dahaka and Falstad together.
I would really like to see them identify something that has the wave clear, not necessarily target the tank unless they want to get rid of a Johanna or something along those lines. So Hanzo, very strong on this battle round, could potentially have that wombo potential that you look for. We saw that yesterday. It's you get the Dragon Zero into the Stay a While and Listen, or vice versa, or the VP into that type of combo, so taking away that. Now, no air ally to reveal the Zeratul, or even a Divine Palm if you're looking to blow an individual up, so taking that away from the Aware. The Aware Gilly had one of the smaller hero pools that we had for supports. Malfurion was up there. Stukov, we haven't seen a whole lot of Stukov yet. With Malfurion and Karazim already banned, then we started to look at things like Uther, something that he played a decent amount of, but Uther doesn't necessarily fit maybe into certain compositions that, you know, we haven't seen a Lunara yet, but heroes like that would draw out different types of heroes to counteract that.
Well, Uther would be able to help Divine Shield if Team Octalysis are trying to move more into a burst, but the problem with that is Void Prison can be an issue segregating out somebody from the Divine Shield, so you're not getting as much value from that. Plus, the way that Team Octalysis has built out so far, they have a ranged hero left, and with the flexibility of that backline, they could move into something that is poison-based and makes it hard for Uther to deal with. So LFM are going to leave the support to respond to the final two picks for Octalysis. They'll pick up ETC. We've seen a lot of ETC in North America so far throughout Phase 2, and then they'll get that Phoenix.
Now I wonder where Octalysis comes in. Decker does really well because he can sleep people, he can root the ETC if he's too aggressive, and that's one thing that if you know Fury, he loves to be aggressive on ETC, oftentimes power sliding in, maybe not always to the greatest of success, but when he makes the plays, it works because he has one of the highest win rates we've ever seen on ETC here in North America. So for him, it's a very comfortable pick, but do you need an interrupt? Do you need something along those lines? Does that make Li Ming a thing?
This is Fury. You do.
But can you afford a Li Ming? Because you will suffer in the wave clear department versus a Phoenix and a Jaina.
Johanna's still up.
Johanna could be the tank to help thwart a lot of that. It also gives you an ETC interrupt as well.
Love it. Fury told me a really funny story when he was, you remember that 5-man death medal that he had? Everyone remembers that? He said, from level 1, I was telling them, I'm picking death metal. Oh, okay.
So
first Junkrat.
Junkrat gives you the wave clear, and it gives you an interrupt with a concussion mine on that. Muradin, not the Johanna that we expected. It gives you the potential to dive in. Riptire gets that backline, Muradin gets that backline, Riptire after a VP. Seems like a pretty decent combo.
And Stay a While and Listen to, Jet Propulsion, super synergistic, and a lot of blow-up potential for Team Octalysis. So what support is going to help against that?
Well, Uther does seem a little bit more viable in this situation. Phoenix can generally handle himself.
Cleanse and Divine Shield for a possible mosh.
Yeah, so there's a lot that can go into that. And if you're looking to save multiple heroes at once, Uther does that. Rhaegar, we haven't seen a lot of Rhaegar. Rhaegar a little bit more susceptible to this dive style, but not a bad option.
This is also a Zeratul that was picked into a Jaina.
No man.
So we'll see if we have Figgy make some adjustments in his build. Things like Frost Armor.
Yep.
Of course, getting the root at 16 too, so that Jaina's less of a viable target for that Zeratul.
Yeah, with Zeratul, sometimes, especially when you go Wormhole at 7, you're generally trying to blink in, get a Q off, get an auto, get a W, and dip on out and press E again, right? That's generally the combo, but if you stay in too long and say the Water Elemental comes out, all of a sudden you've got Frost applied, you get the root, that full combo that you want to get in there with that Wormhole, not quite as appealing. So I think a lot of it will, if that does happen, it will be very combo based around that VP and it's a little bit riskier when you do go that build. So I think that will be something that they have to keep in mind, which again, canceling out the kerosene, baiting out the kerosene, making sure that there is no air ally for the reveal for targeting purposes, definitely makes that a little bit easier for him to get in, a little bit safer for the Zeratul.
There is the possibility of going after Phoenix instead of the Jaina, especially once Jaina gets improved Ice Block. It's almost a no-go unless you can get a lot of these abilities out. But going after Phoenix has Warp, but there is a lot of stun lock to try to stop that Warp. If they can concerted effort, try to make sure that he can't get into that. Maybe you put the VP on Uther so that he can't Divine Shield him, then maybe Phoenix will be the target.
Maybe get some Skullcracker action. Don't know how that works nowadays against that, but we'll find out, as it will be LFM here on the left as the Aware on that familiar face of Uther, trying to keep this team alive. Fury, another familiar face for him on the ETC. We'll have Swabs on Tahaka. Very comfortable pick so far here. Droplets, the new face there. He'll be on the Phoenix. Rounding it out is going to be Figgy, no longer on the front line, because he will be on that Jaina.
Yeah, when you bring in a veteran like Fury, you make adjustments so he's on his comfort role. In the red, it's Team Octalysis. Justing will be playing Muradin. Goku will be Blaze in the top lane. Up next, we're looking at Draded, one of the new people playing the Zeratul.
Interesting.
High risk, high reward for his first game on this roster. Prismaticus will be rocking the Junkrat, and Buds playing Deckard Cain.
Of all the likely scenarios of that rotation between the Blaze Phoenix, or Blaze Zeratul, that's probably the least likely that I anticipated with Prismat. It looks like he's going to take that primary role of being the carry for this team, and Draded, he'll be able to flex over. As you mentioned, he's the Zeratul now, but he's also the Tracer, the Genji, and things of that like will really give them.
Yeah, it fits his role. So what we're seeing is Octalysis have standardized roles, which is very cool to see. Have you seen Draded play Zeratul at all?
I have not. I know that they were very happy with the pickup. It was somebody that they looked at very early on to make sure and get that solid pickup, find one of the best, potential replacements, because, Kierdansky taking off those are big shoes to fill, so they needed to find somebody definitely capable. I think they've got it.
Yeah, Justing said that when he first joined, he was quieter, and you would be joining that star-studded lineup, but now a lot more in the comms and starting to realize that he has a place on this team. It's cool. I'm so pumped for this roster.
Well, I think one of the things for me is that talking to Draded earlier in this year, it seemed like mechanically he's there. He's very much there mechanically, very capable. He had, I think, the 6th or 5th highest KDA on Genji globally, and it's something that he shows he knows what he's doing. But I think that he's missing the element of being on a top team, understanding the nuances of being at the top, understanding all the small mistakes that you can't afford to make. That's very different between a newer team coming into HGC with LFM and then playing with veterans that have been around like Goku, Justin, and Buds that have been at the top for quite some time. I think he's going to learn a lot during this phase, and if you put those two pieces together, it's going to look good.
This has been looking really good for LFM. They have had a control constantly over these shrines for quite a while. That top, I think Octalysis was more reliant on Goku being able to keep it, and though he took it initially, he had to go back and wave clear. And because of that, Swaps was fine to just crouch on that shrine, and LFM had the bottom. They had the better setup with the Giants too. This gives them a 2-minute 30-second Dragonite. It's weaker because it's an early Dragonite, but even still it allows them to start opening up some of these lanes. Look at the bottom, the wave clear of Figgy. Prismaticus is by himself trying to defend versus this. They're just getting maximum amounts of damage done for LFM.
I think one of the things that maybe confused me a little bit was the fact that Prismat was dealing with that night camp on the bottom, but he made the rotation over to the shrine extremely slow. Maybe there was some miscommunication on there about what they thought they might get out of that top lane.
Yes.
But getting 2 fort walls down, or the better part of it, that's a very good start for LFM. I mean, you need this type of start.
I think another issue for them is that we didn't really see Zeratul make a rotation up toward top, and I'm pretty sure he was trying to keep protection around Deckard Cain, who is very weak. And we know with an ETC Uther Jaina, there's a lot of kill potential right from the beginning, so it's understandable you want to protect your Deckard Cain. But with that, both of the shrines being controlled for LFM for that long and being able to zone away in the mid, Octalysis needs to change something up right now, because that should not have happened.
One thing I'm curious about is Phoenix is 13. We generally don't see him with burst-style healers, but he has that option of one of his talents that you gain shields based on a percentage amount of your healing. we've got some changes coming up in next week's patch. So I don't think it's quite viable yet, but I'm wondering, with an Uther, does that make it more viable?
Really well done to mine so that you can get the wizards over the wall, clear them safer. But unfortunately, it didn't get the spell armor granting one. But the front wall going down is it's just a product of losing that first Dragon Knight. They saved the well, which is very important to being able to re-engage and have a place to draw back to in this lane when you start to take damage. But this looks good for LFM, though you can see those changes for the fort towers that you get 2 fort walls. We're still at the same level.
Very different looking. You know, one thing that LFM is doing so well right now is the prioritization on the camps, keeping Octalysis playing their game, controlling the pace of this game. It's something that a lot of experienced teams will do, and then they try and make plays off of them. So while LFM has done some of the proper work so far, it's a matter of what are you going to give me after this? Just controlling rotations and getting camps and a little bit of structure damage, which obviously is good. Can you make plays off of it? Can you force rotations? Can you catch somebody out in a rotation dealing with these camps? So far they haven't done that, and we expect with Fury on that ETC to be aggressive on those plays, especially now that Jaina has that cooldown reduction on her level 7 talent. You can start to chase people down, finally get those burst kills. Still waiting for that to happen.
Well, Wormhole now picked up for Zeratul means that he can be a little more aggressive in trying to find some picks or throw some harassment towards some of the members of LFM. But in the start of the Shrine phase now, bottom lane, staunchly being held by LFM, again having that giant camp, and again Prismaticism being left to his own devices down in the bottom means that something else needs to be done with the other shrines. Octalysis focuses on getting top.
There's a little bit of potential damage in the middle. Draded, however, a little bit low in the health and mana department. No Skullcracker will be giving him the axe, trying to get more of that burst damage and extra damage on the CC. So no surprise there, nothing trying to lock down. But LFM rounding level 10 here. We can see the rotation up. This is one of the better rotations that you're going to see. When you know you're going to give up 10, you can't necessarily afford to stay in the 4-man. So you kind of come over. Nice drag there by Swabs. And now Draded, I think Draded,
he might be dead.
Oh, another drag. Are you
kidding me? Out of cloak and all. Goku's doing his.
It's a matter of time.
Yeah.
In this fight.
Isolation 2. Droplet's going to come around, get the slow on him. Goku has jet propulsion to make it out. Only the 1 kill, but that's a kill that gives heroic abilities to LFM. Fury considering shrines taken bottom lane. Prismaticism doing what he can to delay a secondary Dragon Knight for LFM Esports. Is it enough?
Looks like Octalysis should have 10, at least to contest mid. Biggie, nice sidestep there, easier to do when you're mounted. Taking a bit of damage. Biggie does have that cooldown reduction on his Q, so Justin is just hanging out. Junkrat. This is not the game I expected to come in to start today, Gilly.
Same. Totally same, but great for LFM. The trade out, ring around the rosy style for the shrines. Gets Goku back on the point top, so no Dragon Knight, but this is a lot of staggered deaths, or a couple of staggered deaths, but a lot of staggered damage that forces back Octalysis.
See a stun coming in. It looks like Swab should be able to regain control, and I think Octalysis is going to have to turn their attention mid, but we've got Vision rotating up here on Jaina.
Water
Elemental's out, Power Slide's going to be there. Justin, however, trying to sit on that backside.
It's the drag.
No
it's
bunker.
The kill.
Stunned out, dragged out, just about everything, and bunker might have needed to have been pressed a little bit earlier.
Maybe not expecting the rotation down from the Dahaka, but knowing the Dahaka was there, I'm not sure either. But now Draded's in the bottom. Octalysis are keeping LFM from getting the Dragon Knight, but they are, it feels like not quite communicating who is where and what's happening because they are getting caught pretty much everywhere.
Jaina making the rotation back up. Water Elemental still about 18 seconds away. And now this is going to be control of LFM here, and Team Octalysis responding in the mid with multiple members. We haven't seen the big setup. We haven't seen the VP. We haven't seen the stay a while and listen. The Riptire is going to follow up a lot of this, and it's just a lot of damage is missing. Nice face melt there.
Fury is wrecking on his ETC. Both of these Warrior players do play a lot of ETC, but I do count it as one of Fury's best, one of his favorites. Getting into position to try to channel bot, though. Not going to be there. Will be soon as LFM picked up that giant camp. I mean, part of this issue is, we talked about it, you mentioned it, wave clear is somewhat of an issue. And though Prismaticism picked up that Junkrat to try to help with that, and they have Zeratul too, they're having to rotate everywhere, and and defend each other. Maybe they can get a kill now on Fury and start to make something happen.
Fury might be trying to turn around and make this happen. Now that that's down, that opens the door for a potential mosh pit. I think Octalysis has to walk away. They had no follow-up, no damage to follow that up, and you could see the minute the new cleanse was available, Fury was like, hold on, I can turn this if I just have a moment. He didn't get it. But now with that stay a while and listen down, there's only one person that can interrupt. Riptire's out. That's one of the interrupts. The last one left is going to be the concussion mine. See if Fury can find an opportunity. There's Divine Shield.
Justin's avatared. Fury still has Mosh if he can find the place, find the time. Void Prison now down. Let's see if they have any damage behind that, but with Riptire already being down, that's a lot of your follow-up damage other than that. Cleave build of Zeratul too, and there's not the consistent stay a while into VP or vice versa with the control from that. So Octalysis has to back off.
It's tough. I mean, Justin desperately needs 13, and they have it now. Getting that healing static, he was forced to use Avatar, and I think it's one of those moments for him to really get some bonus healing in these fights. However, he's holding his pick for now. I'd be surprised if it was anything else.
I was pretty sure that earlier Breeze took Thunderstrike, but that was with a... Yeah, there's the healing static. Maybe he didn't take that.
Just barely got out of there. There's going to be a cleanse. Biggie, however, Draded comes in. There's going to be the first kill, but there's going to be a salvo in return. So Draded's going to fall 1-for-1 so far. Power slide in. There's going to be the mosh pit. Beautiful. Beautiful interrupt there by Justin.
Really good. Justin now finds himself on the other side of a sea of blue from the rest of his team.
Again, you can't stack on this because once he hits his...
Now every time he tries to dwarf toss out, Fury's got his number.
Oh my
the
goodness.
cutter still goes even when he's sleeping. He's deadly.
Oh, it got just past. Actually, Dahaka got the one up top, and you could see that Buds was trying to hold position to allow that DK to be picked up mid. Now instead they lose 2 members, and it looks like LFM should be able to get the second DK of the game. Just got to avoid those ranged minions. You know, they can be a little bit pesky in the middle and trying to cap.
You know, we talked about Jaina versus Zeratul, but we didn't talk about Hammer of the Lightbringer, Uther build versus Zeratul. And you saw that Draded went in, he got the kill on Figgy, but with that cooldown reduction of your Hammer of Justice, and now having Well Met too, which has the slow and the damage reduction, it's very effective at dealing with the Zeratul, and Draded couldn't get much done out of that because he had used everything to get in and get that kill for his team.
There's going to be a lot on Draded shoulders because post 16 is when Zeratul really spikes up. Getting that bonus damage when you hit multiple people with your cleave is really going to be where the damage comes in. And right now they're severely lacking any type of sustain. Their wave clear is lacking, and right now they're completely reliant on wombos. There has not been a single wombo attempted. Everything is used defensively. There's been no setup, and they're on their heels, find themselves 2 levels down with a keep wall falling.
Well, J-Hal, that's the problem of relying on wombos on Dragonshire. This is far more skirmish-based, and Octalysis have been run ragged going back and forth between all of the lanes. Now, Keep is being worked on, and this is not where you want to be versus a global on Dragonshire 2, which LFM Esports also has. There's no global available to Octalysis to try to get back. All they can choose is try to make this fight happen. Riptire can knock back Fury. Can they slow him down enough?
Fury's got so much protection. We still have D-Shield available, but that's not going to be there. Mosh Pit's going to at least lock down Buds, but it's going to be interrupted. Stay a while and listen right outside of the VP, which means Fury is isolated. There's going to be the stun, but the D-Shield out in time, and now we have the salvo in return. Trying to get the interrupt. They get back in onto Droplets, who's going to warp out, but I don't know if they're done yet.
Now, slow Singularity Spike into Stormbolt. And finally, Octalysis get a kill. They lost their keep. They got to keep going with this momentum now. Get 16, get some camps, try to stabilize this battleground.
They've got to get aggressive. They've lost a keep. As you mentioned, the global's going to be there, and that's very difficult to come back from. So they've got to get this opportunity under their belt. They can't just get one camp. This is an opportunity for them to potentially tempo storm style this, grab the right siege camp, grab the bottom night camp, and it doesn't look like they're making that rotation. I think it's a big mistake. If you want to get control where you know that it's not going to be heavily contested, I think that's your opportunity. It looks like they will get that top camp, but not starting that bottom camp. The rotation is going to be a little bit too slow unless we see some really precise timing. I think it might be a missed opportunity to get back via structures.
This was a double camp situation where Justin went to check to see if LFM was indeed on their bruisers, which they were. Now they get their giants. The bottom bruisers still up if they want to try to double this up. and get some siege damage done to this bottom lane.
But the rotation's so slow.
Very slow.
I mean,
It's very
Dahaka has
slow.
the global. We still could have a 5-on-5. They do have 6 teams here, but the fact that these siege giants, I mean, it's almost better to not clear that catapult out right away, to just buy a little bit of time. And the further this goes, the more in danger it is of taking some random damage. Phoenix getting mid, and I think that there's just going to be way too much defensively here. And Octalysis, I don't think they're going to get the value. They should get Fort Wall. I don't think there's any risk that LFM has, but between a Phoenix and a Jaina, this is easy clear.
And they feel like they need all 5 here. So with Bruisers and Dahaka top, the clock is ticking against Octalysis, because the longer that he can just continually to sit up toward that, the closer the 20 is going to happen. Though, if they can force a fight first, bring Dahaka down, they need to be cognizant of the closest bushes, where he's going to be, especially for Buds on that weak Deckard Cain, but strong in other ways, you know. You're going to have to try to force the fight now.
Fury looking for an opportunity. Nice concussion mine has isolated Fury for the moment. We see Droplets trying to return some damage. Stay a while and Listen's going to lock down 2 members. Riptire, we're going to see if it can go, but D-Shield already used. Salvo in return. Ford is down, bunker used. Swabs joining the fight.
Look at that mosh pit. Void Prison immediately stops it. But we see Deckard Cain stuck inside, jet propulsion through, but a mine underneath is enough to stop that mosh pit. Well done from Octalysis to deal with a scary Fury mosh.
Yeah, Octalysis did get the fort, Gillian. I think that's a huge step for them to get back into this game, but they also gave up top fort, which means that the experience they tried to get back did not necessarily net the results that they wanted, because now we're looking at 20 approaching here for LFM, and once they get 20 with that global, and if we start getting this DK, they have damage. Wait a minute, we've got a power slide in. We might have a fight before we even get to 20.
Now Octalysis wants to keep fighting if they can, but they're separated. Prismat's gonna mine himself in. With Ripper Arrow, he'll have that back up soon. Trying to fight with Mosh Pit being down would be best case scenario for them if they could, but they have lost a lot of heroic abilities. They only have Bunker, but they do get the kill on Jaina and Droplets. Stormbolt.
You could see a lot of potential there when they tried to take down Junkrat, but they were unable to do so, and now Fury tries to come back and salvage a little bit of what went wrong. Bunker's saving Draded there, at least for the moment. He's going to get out Salvo, not doing enough damage, so only Jaina falls. Octalysis is finding their way back into this through the team fighting, but Fury, sometimes, Gilly, when you're that aggressive, you might leave the backline isolated, because Dahaka and ETC were both very deep behind Octalysis, but it definitely was not the ideal position, as Figgy's probably wondering, could I get some help back here?
Yeah, communication between the two of them should fix that, figuring out who needs to be on Jaina saving duty. Swabs saved LFM from losing a Dragon Knight, but they still don't have Jaina just yet, and Octalysis get one more chance at a fight before LFM achieves 20.
Right now, they're going to get the DK, and this might be enough, because it's hard to fight into a DK, 20 or not. And Octalysis starting to change this late game, step by step. They've done it. All it took was one pick. Now all of a sudden they've got a DK, and by the time this DK is done, they should have 20, and this is going to be an even game. It's just a matter of can Octalysis neutralize the lane and get a keep of their own. Right now, they're turning their attention mid. Again, the fort towers, not so much. A little bit more XP in the fort itself, but this is, it's getting you in the game, but it's not even in the field.
The concern might have been without 20, trying to push in on the keep structures. Oh man, there's that double backline, and the contagion that hits two. Torbus with a 3-man mosh pit. Deckard Cain's gonna go down. Purification Salvo takes out more. 3 kills as the Dragon Knight continuing to do what he could, but Draded, you are all that is left.
Yeah, Figgy, he gets the heal. He's going to survive, and Fury, he's just trying to get into position with that power slide. This is going to be game over here in just a moment. Nice ice block. Going to buy a little bit of time, but they are going directly past Go, collecting a core in the process. And Octalysis, Gilly, for a team that has BlizzCon aspirations, and LFM, a team that fought their way out of the Crucible, this new formed roster with Fury, I'd say that ETC pick paid off.
I said it before, LFM getting Fury was a catch, but I also think that Droplets played a mean game one. for HGC. Well done from LFM Esports, getting a point on the board of the series and winning their first game of Phase 2.
It was such a controlled, measured approach. I mean, all it took was 1 TK 2.5 minutes in, which was a little bit awkward. But then, you know, once 10 started to come in and that nature, it seemed like the aggression of Fury, Octalysis didn't have the answer for. And that's where Zeratul picks come in. You mentioned the hammer coming down against the Zeratul. That's always been the #1 counter when we saw it at the beginning of the year. Volskaya, things of that nature. It was just, well, if you come in, we're just going to drop the hammer on you. Good luck getting out. And even if you get in, you're not doing anything. The Junkrat, I don't think, brings the proper damage that they needed. The sustain just isn't quite there. Hitting those grenades is not always easy. Your autos are fairly weak because they're AoE. I just think that Octalysis, they missed the mark a little bit.
Yeah, it does feel like maybe with the drafting, the adjustment is to try to make sure that if they want to run that kind of wombo, they're getting more of the follow-up damage. But also, because LFM was so willing to bring the fight to Octalysis, a lot of times abilities were not used in the way they would have ideally liked. You know, Void Prison's being used to stop Mosh Pit, Riptire's used at the beginning of the fight to try to stop something out, Riptire's being used just to try to zone someone away so that they could get the aggression, and then not having those follow-up CCs to follow up the same way. It just didn't quite feel coordinated like we would expect, like we've seen from like the old school Roll 20 and Octalysis, even Octalysis toward playoffs too. So it could just be as much as the map, it was the LFM battleground too.
Well, I think the whole thing is, I look at a team like Octalysis and the Wombo combo. Then I look at a team like Heroes Hearth, and I'm not necessarily making direct comparisons, but Heroes Hearth, they love their Wombos. But they also like the Wombos just off the soft Wombos, we could call them, off of basic abilities. There wasn't a whole lot of that. There was no displacement, there was no CC, there was no real follow-up damage from anything. Zeratul, early game, super weak. Junkrat, I hate to say it, he's not putting out much damage. Where are the kills coming from? And I think that was the hardest part, is they had a hard time getting their footing early game. And even when they started to climb back, it was just too much to get out of. But I got to credit LFM. The fact that they did fight that way. And again, having Fury there on ETC, game #1, to bring that confidence out. It's like, we're going in. Let's kill some people. And they did that pretty easily.
They looked very good, coordinated. I think the Dahaka pick was especially good for them. There was a time when LFM did get one team fight victory and they all had to group together. They even had Blaze, Goku with them, and so Swabs was untouched in the top lane, took that top fort to neutralize anything that Octalysis got back. That was after a keep went down too, so even getting the fort in that lane isn't going to stop catapults from pressuring you. It was really well done. LFM came in with a game plan and it worked out.
Just the fact that I can't get over enough how confident Octalysis is. And they might just come back and take the next 3 games. Who knows? But that probability is not the same anymore. And so for LFM, we know that there's going to be continued growing pains. Again, when you make 2 roster changes and as drastic as they are in a team that is fighting their way up from one of the bottom 2 spots, I'd say this is a pretty good start. It's just getting that first win under your belt, I think, is definitely for them. But Octalysis, do they get shook from this? That's my question.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Another hard situation is the Dragon Knight at the end. On Octalysis Dragon Knight, who do you put into it with that composition? It's a tough choice to have to make. And sometimes you don't get to make the choice. You just have to put whoever's there because you've worked your way into getting the shrines. But unfortunate that they didn't have the safety net of having Void Prison. But let's see, we've got game 2 just about ready to get the draft underway.